All right, good evening and welcome to the Tennessee House joint debate sponsored by the Williamson County Republican Party. This debate is for the contested districts of 61, 63, and 92. Our District 65 is not contested, and it is served by Representative Sam Whitson. We are very glad that Representative Whitson and his wife Pam are in our audience tonight, and he will be with us in just a moment and help lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. My name is Sherry Hammond, and I'm the treasurer of the Williamson County Republican Party, and I will serve as moderator for our debate this evening. We also have Sherry Anderson, and Sherry is the president of the Williamson County Career Republican Women, and she will serve as our timekeeper. We also have in our audience our chairman, Cheryl Brown. There she is, right behind us over here. She's our chairman, and we are very thankful for the hard work that she gives to our party every single day. We first also want to say thank you to our media panelists. They are Derby Jones with Williamson Herald and Tom Lawrence with WAKM Radio. They have prepared all the questions. They will be asking all the questions, and none of the questions are known beforehand. So we're going to hear them at the first time that our candidates get to hear them and you get to hear them. We also want to thank Mr. Creed Henderson and his crew with WCTV. They are recording the debate tonight. It will be aired at a later time on Channel 3. We were also hoping that it was going to be live right now on their YouTube channel. The county is having, I think, a little bit of an internet problem, but that should be fixed very soon, and it will be viewed on the YouTube channel for Williamson County Television. We want to thank all of our candidates that are joining us here tonight. We did have a full slate, but unfortunately, Mr. Jake McCalman is not able to join us. He had a family situation that arose, and so he will not be with us. We want to thank each one of you because it's much more fun to have a live debate with a live audience. So thank you for being here tonight in person. We do ask you, though, because we do want a professional and respectful and very informative debate, if you will please keep all of your applause and comments not even just to a minimum, but not at all, unless we tee you up for it. And we're going to give you an opportunity at the beginning and an opportunity at the end. And that's because we want to make sure that all of our candidates can speak and be heard by each one of you. Representative Whitson, if you'll please come to the podium, and then Ms. Leanne Gleaves, if you'll please come to the podium. Leanne is going to open us up in prayer, followed by Representative Whitson, who will lead us in the pledge. Leanne.
Dear Lord, bless all of us here this evening. We are here to listen and learn more about our leaders, their ideas, and where they stand. Instill in us the wisdom on who we should vote for, and help us remember that at the end of the day, we Republicans are on the same team, moving forward, Lord, the values you taught us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Please join me in the pledge as we honor our nation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
All right, one last reminder, if you'll please all make sure you have silenced your phone. And now, as I walk around the podium and we get ready to begin, this is your first time to be loud. So let's give a big round of applause to all of our candidates. All right. Is everyone ready? We're going to open up with candidate openings. Each of our candidates will have 1 minute to present an opening statement. And every time we ask a question tonight or a follow-up, I will be sure to key you up so you'll know that it's your turn and to remind you how much time that you have. Right now, we're just going to go right down the row. And so, Mr. Gino Boso, if you'll please start us, and you'll have 1 minute for your opening statement. Thank you. And excuse me, as a reminder, again, Ms. Anderson is sitting right there, and she'll hold up any cards to let you know when your time is near the end or at the end.
Thank you, Sherry. One question which is likely on the mind of voters in District 61 tonight is this. Gino, why should I vote for you? Let me begin to answer that question. I am a person who believes with every fiber of my being that the strength of our community depends upon the strength of our families. If our families are strong, our communities will be strong. If our communities are strong, our state will be strong. Strengthening the family begins with allowing families to keep what they earn. It also involves providing a first-class education for every child in our school system, including every child with a special need. It also involves protecting the precious resources that we have here in Williamson County. If those values align with yours, I would very much appreciate your vote in this election. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ravener, 1 minute.
Thank you. I'm a first-time candidate, but my broad and transformational life experiences as a business leader, military officer, and engaged community volunteer gives me a deep and unique perspective and pulse on the county and the state. Those experiences have forged extensive leadership capabilities as a problem solver, working positively and constructively with others with common sense, sound judgment, and with the best interest in mind of the people that I would represent. I am one who truly believes that the elected officials work for the people who vote them into office and not the other way around. I'm a conservative Republican who believes in traditional family values, low taxes, fiscal responsibility, and a strong public school system as keys to sustain personal growth and overall economic prosperity. With the support of many of the trusted current and past elected officials, community leaders, and organizations who know me best, I believe I'm the best candidate in this election for the role. I want to continue my lifelong service commitment and take that passion of our community to the State House and do the work of the people for Williamson County.
Thank you. Ms. Moore, 1 minute.
About 10 years ago, I was confronted with a textbook that was being used here in Williamson County. That textbook had an anti-Semitic quote. It was anti-American, anti-Judeo-Christian, the very values our country was founded upon. When I saw the extent of the content, I began to tell my neighbors and others to rally the troops, to show moms and dads and tax-paying citizens what our children were being educated with. And when we went before the school board to try to remove the textbook, the requests of the parents was not honored. We went to the state capitol and we took this issue on to our state legislature, and we were able to pass legislation to ensure that history textbooks will be accurate, they will be unbiased, and they will reflect the values of our community. If we can't educate our children accurately, we will lose our country, we will lose our state, and we will lose our community. And unfortunately, over the last decade, the problem has only gotten worse.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Time is up. Mr. Sloan, 1 minute, please.
All right. So me running for candidacy for District 63 really started during the whole 2020 COVID came about. Mandates that were basically infringing on our rights as American people in Williamson County, but just not in our county, but across the whole United States, really didn't set well with me. And then kind of like a trifecta, CRT came about as well. So I really had to think Williamson County is better than that. We don't need that in our school systems, as well as we need to fight back against the mandates. And another factor that came into me is the integrity. I talked to a lot of people, and they said the candidate that was already in office did not show integrity that Williamson County is. So that's kind of one of the three reasons why I'm running is because we need integrity reinstilled back in that office seat.
Thank you. Mr. Fitterer, one moment.
Thank you,
1
Sherry.
minute.
And thank you for everybody for coming. Like so many of you, I'm not fortunate enough to be a native of Middle Tennessee, but when I got to this special place 10 years ago, I immediately got involved in our community and have worked tirelessly since for improvement each and every day. The voters of this district have already elected me twice. The past several years, the local Spring Hill media has named me best elected official, citing my commitment to transparency, communication, and engagement with voters. There's nobody in this race who knows Spring Hill or its challenges better than I do. And Marshall County is going to be facing the same set of challenges over the next several years. There's no one better prepared to advocate and champion our diverse and growing district better than myself. I don't think you're going to find a big difference between us as candidates when it comes to protecting life or personal freedoms and liberty or fiscal policy. I think the difference is going to be in who can lead with integrity, who's been here in the district, who knows the issues, knows the people, and can get results. I can promise you all that I'll serve with integrity, honesty, transparency. I'll follow the rule of law. You don't have to take my word on it. You can look back at the past 8 years and how I've already been serving.
Thank you. Mr. Ford, 1 minute.
Yeah, good evening. Inflation is out of control. Only 13% of the people in America today say that we're on the right path. The political divide has never been greater. If you elect me, will I solve these problems? Not by myself, but with relationships. Together, we can solve these problems. And I will promise you one thing. If you elect me to be your District 92 representative, when you pick up the paper and you see Williamson County Representative, you will not have to shrink back. You will not have to be afraid of what you read. When you read House of Representatives from Williamson County, Jeff Ford, you will be able to lean in. You will be able to have confidence that what you are about to read is true, is honest, and is in the best interest of the people of District 92. People say, why are you running? I've got a beautiful wife, first grandchild on the way. Why are you doing this at this point? Because I'm scared about the world that my new granddaughter Juniper is going to come into, and I can make a difference.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Representative Warner, 1 minute, please.
Thank you, and it's an honor to be here tonight. I first ran for office and was elected state representative 2 years ago. At that time, our community was in desperate need of a conservative voice in Nashville. Thanks to the great folks of the 92nd District, they gave me that opportunity. I have spent the last 2 years fighting career politicians and lobbyists that run our state. All we need in this office and in this state is less government and good old-fashioned common sense. I look forward to serving, to continue serving as your state representative of the 92nd District. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to now our first set of questions. And as a reminder, there will be a question answered. You will have 1 minute each to answer, and then there will be a follow-up question, and you'll have 30 seconds to answer. So our first question will be given by Mr. Derby Jones from Williamson Herald. And just to get you ready, then the first answer will be by Mr. Ravener. Mr. Derby.
Okay, my first question is something that's been kind of a hot topic in the news recently. What is your reaction to the Hillsdale College President Larry Arns disparaging public school teachers in front of Governor Bill Lee? And should the college be allowed to operate charter schools in Tennessee, specifically in Williamson County?
Thank you.
Is that two questions?
Up to you.
All right, let's just go with the first one. I can have
All
the
right, would
second
you
one as
like
the
to
follow-up.
repeat it? Go ahead and repeat just the first one.
All right. What is your reaction to Hillsdale College President Larry Arns disparaging public school teachers in front of Governor Bill Lee?
All right, thank you. And so, Mr. Ravener, would you begin? 1 minute.
Well, first thing is I'm a product of public schools, and I started with nothing, and through great teachers and coaches, they were able to help me get a start in life. We have a fantastic school system here in Williamson County. It is one of the key magnets of what brings people here. We're going to double the population in the next 20 years, and one of the reasons is because of the public school system. We have fantastic teachers, including the top grades 3 through 8 in the state. We had 7 students at Franklin High School score perfect scores in the ACT, and we need to continue that great public school system support our teachers, take care of our teachers and the school systems, maintain safety within those schools, and not be disparaging our teachers here in Williamson County. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Moore, and may I say, if at any time you'd like the question repeated, if you need that, please be sure to ask. Ms. Moore, 1 minute.
Personally, I was shocked that Larry Arnn would make such a statement about the teachers, but I was equally concerned about the lack of response from the governor to stand up for our teachers. Our teachers have endured some of the toughest couple of years in, I'm sure, many of their history. And for our governor not to speak out on their behalf and to acknowledge them and show his gratitude to them. There are teachers that are problems in the schools across the state, but for the most part, our teachers work very hard to help our children, especially through these last couple of years, this process.
Thank you. Mr. Sloan.
When it comes about his comment made about teachers, everyone has an opinion. Doesn't mean it's right. I mean, unless that man has looked over individually each teacher across the state to know really where they stand and how they're teaching their kids. There's no sense in making a generalized statement on a group of people. That's teaching our fine young men and women that are going to be outstanding citizens. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sloan. Mr. Fitterer.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think I'll take a full minute either. The comments were completely inappropriate. My wife, who's here tonight, my mother, my brother, my sister-in-law are all public educators. Very, very, very strongly believe in a strong public education system. I think as a community, as a county, and as a state, we do need to focus on restoring some honor and dignity back to the profession of teaching. I believe it was 2 years ago, Middle Tennessee State only graduated 2 math teachers. That's not nearly enough educators entering the system to meet the demand and maintain the quality of life that we expect here in Middle Tennessee.
Thank you. Mr. Ford.
Thank you. I was disgusted by those statements. It's the best word I can use in a public forum. Our teachers deserve respect. They deserve support. We all have a teacher who touched us in some way. Mine was Miss Gray in 10th grade Algebra 2 at McGavock High School, who touched and recognized a shy boy in the back of the room and said, "You're good at this, and you can do more." At the same time, we have to recognize that in Williamson County, only 2/3 of our students are reading at grade level. That is not the fault of the teachers. We need some changes in our education system. Teachers need better support. As I've stood on the doorsteps of teachers across this district, they've said, "Let us teach. Get rid of the red tape. Let us teach." And that's what I will support.
Thank you. Representative Warner.
Could you repeat the question, please?
What is your reaction to the Hillsdale College President Larry Arnn's disparaging public school teachers in front of Governor Bill Lee?
My reaction is it was a total disgrace. It was improper, and it should have never been said. And I'm equally as disappointed in our governor for not getting up and walking out of the room and shutting it down. I stand 100% behind our public school systems, and I support our teachers fully. Total disgrace. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Bosa.
Derby, the statement was both insulting and wrong. We all know that our teachers are trained in all parts of all colleges, not what Dr. Arnn said. The most unfortunate thing about that statement is that it has now overshadowed the wonderful work that Governor Lee has done in education over his first 4 years. He's got the new funding formula passed, TISA, which allows the money, the tuition dollars to follow the child. He's got his ESA program passed. He's got this wonderful system of charter schools that are about to improve education across the state. Our schools here, of course, in Williamson County are wonderful, but Governor Lee is looking at the entire state. In Shelby and in Davidson counties, from grades 3 through 8, we only have 9% of students at proficiency level in mathematics. That has to change, and what Governor Lee is doing is helping the entire state of Tennessee. And what's most unfortunate about those comments by Dr. Arnn is that in the press we see so much discussion about those comments and not as much focus as needs to be on the great work Governor Lee is doing.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Jones, would you like to do a follow-up?
Yeah, so my question is, should the college, Hillsdale College, still be allowed to operate charter schools in the state of Tennessee and specifically in Williamson County?
All right, thank you. We're going to do in the same order. This will be a 30-second response, up to a 30-second response. Mr. Rabner.
Well, my focus is going to be on Williamson County, and in Williamson County, we don't need charter schools because of our great public school system. As has been mentioned, there are opportunities throughout the state, and where there are failing systems, we've got to look at better ways in which to improve those school systems. But here in Williamson County, I would say no.
All right, Ms. Moore.
I believe that a charter school is the decision of the parent and what the parent feels is best for the child. It's not for the state to decide whether we should allow charter schools, whether a comment is made by Larry Arnn or not, because that charter school is going to be run locally. So I believe that it needs to be left up to the parents. The parents have to make that decision themselves as to whether they want their child in a charter school. But our education system should be just as good as the charter schools. We should not neglect our public schools and our children, because the majority of our children in this state are in the public school system.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Mr. Sloan, 30 seconds.
From who and me knocking on doors, it's kind of what I've been hearing from the parents. They want choice of school. They want to be able to put their kid in a classroom that they feel is appropriate and getting the education that their child needs. I don't see that need in Williamson County. However, if I am elected as a state representative, if those needs are needed across the state and other parts, I'm not saying that we shouldn't look into that, choice, but leave it up to the parents.
All right, thank you. Mr. Fitterer.
Thank you. So specific to Hinsdale, no, I don't think they should be allowed to operate within the state. I think those statements were disqualifying, and I believe Representative White has said as much as well past day or two. Thank you.
Mr. Ford.
Thank you for the question, Derby. We have a process for approving charter schools in this state, and it comes down to the local school district. It's the one who is making those decisions and making those according to criteria that's set up by the state. I don't see one stupid statement by one person on the board to be something that is disqualifying according to the state law. If we need to change the state law to accommodate that and make that something, then we need to look at that issue.
Thank you. Representative Warner.
No, I don't think they should be allowed in Williamson County, and I stand strong against charter schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bosso.
Derby, Hillsdale College is a wonderful Christian college. The quality of its classical charter school program was the same both before and after Dr. Arnn's uneducated statement. So yes, I do not believe that just because one gentleman made a statement as disgusting as it was, that disqualifies and cancels the entire institution and its charter schools program, which has received rave reviews across the entire country. We have too much canceling going on in our country. Let's not be part of that.
Thank you, Mr. Bosso. And again, I'm just going to remind the audience that we're going to have it completely quiet in here, please. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to move on to question number 2, and that's from Mr. Tom Lawrence. And it, again, will be a question, a full question, and then a follow-up question. And Ms. Moore, you will begin the process once the question has been asked.
Not sure I understand that, but
Your question, Mr. Lawrence.
this is a two-part question.
Yes, thank you.
First part of the question can be answered with one word. It'll take some explanation. Are you packing? If you are, why are you? If you are not, why are you not?
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Ms. Moore, you begin. You'll have 1 minute to answer.
So, Mr. Lawrence, for clarification, are you asking me if I'm currently packing right now as I sit here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, no, I'm not currently packing right now. And the reason why I'm not packing right now is because I am on or in a facility where the school board is located. And so I can't bring a firearm into this facility. But yes, I do carry when I'm not in a facility where I can't wear or bring in my firearm.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. All right, Mr. Sloan.
Same thing as her. I can't pack a gun here on these premises. However, I do pack Smith & Wesson 9mm outside of here.
Impressive.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sloan. Mr. Fitterer.
I'm with Mr. Sloan. My preference is the Smith & Wesson M&P Shield. Obviously not carrying now due to where we're located, but I've been a concealed carry permit holder my entire adult life, and I don't plan on that changing anytime soon.
Thank you, Mr. Ford.
No, sir, I'm not carrying it at this moment. Appreciate the question. I've been in this body and understand the seriousness of respecting the law and respecting this room. So thank you.
All right, Representative Warner.
No, I'm not packing, but I fully support the Second Amendment and think it ought to be an individual's right if they want to pack.
Thank you. Mr. Bolso?
Tom, I'm here armed only with my feeble intellect. I did not bring any firearms because I knew Sheriff Dusty Rhodes was going to be here. I know he's going to take care of anybody who tries to do harm to anyone in this room.
Thank you. Mr. Abner.
I as well support the right to bear arms. I'm not carrying for all the reasons mentioned. I too have a lot of trust and faith in Sheriff Dusty Rhodes. When I went and talked to him for about an hour and a half at his office in the jail in Williamson County last week, as well as going to the Brentwood training facility, the brand new training facility in Brentwood, and those folks are highly trained, highly educated, and ready to take on the needs that we've got right here.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Lawrence, do you have a follow-up question?
No, I don't.
All right. Then we're going to move on to question number 3. We'll go back to Mr. Jones, Derby Jones from Williamson Herald. Again, we'll be back to a 1-minute answer. And then, Mr. Sloan, you're going to kick us off. So, Mr. Jones, when you're ready.
I want to follow up with Tom's topic, if that's okay.
Absolutely. We can go back up and you can do the follow-up.
Or however you want to
Yeah, let's do
keep
the
up with
follow-up.
it. Should individuals 18 to 21 be allowed to carry open or concealed firearms without a permit or background check?
All right, so we're going to go back and make that the follow-up. Ms. Moore, you're going to kick us off with 30-second answer, please.
No. No one should be able to carry unless they've had a background check. And as long as they've gone through the correct lawful process of obtaining a firearm and they have the permit, then I have no problem.
Thank you. Mr. Sloan?
The same way, I don't believe anyone should be able to carry a gun, without a background check. That's just my personal preference. And on my website, it says adding possibly a mechanism, not law, but a mechanism. So if they commit a crime in the juvenile record, that then it opens it up to where that'd be flagged. And I don't mean that as a red flag law. I mean that as just a mechanism. So there'll be more of a strenuous background, just adding another layer to it.
Thank you. Mr. Fitterer?
Same answers all around. I don't think there's anything wrong with an 18-year-old who passes a background check. I was 18 when I received my first concealed carry permit, and I was appropriately trained in using the weapons.
Thank you. Mr. Ford?
Thank you, Derby, for the question. We have seen mass shootings, and most of the mass shootings, unfortunately, have been by young males. I think it's a societal problem, not a law and regulation problem. And I think we as a society should recognize those individuals who seem to be at risk and reach into their lives. Again, like Mr. Sloan, not a red flag law where we go to enforcement, but we reach into their lives and restore them back into the community.
Thank you. Representative Warner?
If they went through the proper process, yes, they should be able to purchase that firearm.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Bolso?
Derby, I agree that obviously anyone 18, 21 or older needs to have a background check in order to purchase a firearm. But if your question even more specifically is, would I consider that a young lady who has finished high school and has moved away to college or to a job should be able to purchase a gun after having a background check to protect herself? The answer is absolutely.
Thank you. Mr. Abner?
You know, when I was in the military, I had to qualify expert on the rifle, Colt 45. I had a lot of training on the range to do that. I think training and background checks are needed to ensure that people do not make the mistakes that untrained people will make. There is no one answer to this question in that it is a combination of watching mental health, looking at the way we're training and giving people the right to bear those arms, and the society around us and what we're doing about it. I think we've got to investigate this further to ensure that we're doing the right thing by our youth.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Jones, we're back to you for a full question, which will have a 1-minute answer, please. And Mr. Sloan, you'll start. Thank you.
All right. Should the General Assembly prohibit the discharge of members of the Tennessee National Guard who refuse to take the COVID vaccine?
I don't believe any vaccine should be forced on someone that hasn't meet the requirement of clinical trial and data substantiating that the vaccine should be pressed on anyone. So for them to discharge any person with a dishonorable discharge, that should not happen. They should be able to have the right to choose to whether to take the vaccine or not.
Thank you. Mr. Fitterer.
Thank you for the question, Derby. My understanding of Tennessee state law and the Tennessee Constitution is that the General Assembly doesn't have a legal mechanism to prevent as much. If I'm mistaken in that, then yes, they should absolutely prevent it, but they should use whatever legal means are available to them to protect the Guard members. I just don't believe that what you're describing is actually allowed within the Tennessee state Constitution.
Thank you. Mr. Ford.
Thank you for the question, Derby, an important issue. Our National Guard are very important, and they should be able to remain active on duty without taking the vaccine.
All right, thank you. Representative Warner.
I agree. They shouldn't be forced to take the vaccine. It's totally, no one should be forced to take the vaccine. That's the reason I stood with those members at the Capitol a few weeks back, and I respect their decision not to take the vaccine.
Thank you. Mr. Boso.
Derby, no Guardsman should be discharged from the Tennessee Army National Guard for refusal to take the COVID-19. That, frankly, in my opinion, violates every principle that this state was founded on. Each one of those Guardsmen, when they took the oath, promised to support and defend the Constitution of the state of Tennessee. They have done that admirably. It's now time for the state of Tennessee to step up and support and defend them against this incredible federal overreach by the Department of Defense that seeks to continue to impose its woke ideology on states across this country in areas that have nothing to do with national security or military preparedness. So absolutely not. They should not be discharged. In our state, at every level, not just the General Assembly, but the governor and the Attorney General's office should exercise every lawful means to fight against this federal overreach.
Thank you. Mr. Rabiner.
Yeah, I believe this is a state decision as well. This is about force readiness. I may be the only one that served in the military and had to get a number of shots and vaccines along the way of anybody here. But we also need good order and discipline. These soldiers should not be discharged. We ought to find a better way to handle this situation and find the method by which we can ensure we maintain our force readiness, keep our Guardsmen in uniform, and find a way for us to be able to work our way through this challenging situation, because the facts just aren't there that they should be mandated to take these vaccines. It ought to be a personal decision.
Thank you. Ms. Moore.
I completely disagree with forcing our military, our Guardsmen from having to take this vaccine. These men and women filed religious and medical exemptions, and their constitutional rights were violated by them not being able to choose the vaccine or not choose the vaccine. We have no right in taking their rights, their freedoms from them. And it's weakened, as a result, it weakens our readiness, not just with our state guard, our militia, but also on a national scale this country, which puts our nation in jeopardy.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Jones or Mr. Lawrence, do you have a follow-up to that question?
I feel like it's probably been answered. I mean, I can ask it and see.
Okay.
But the second part of this was, do you believe the state has the legal standing to override a federal law that would mandate a vaccine?
All right. Certainly. There's the question. Mr. Sloan?
Technically, I haven't looked into it that much to see if the state does have that ability to do so. I mean, federal law is federal law until we can do something to, get rid of any law that is imposed on us that is not constitutional. But yeah, if there is an ability for the state to keep the federal government from imposing that, I hope we find it soon.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Fitterer?
Thank you, Derby. And I think I answered that in the first half of my response. But I will more broadly say that, the General Assembly always needs to be mindful of the 10th Amendment, which very clearly states any right not given to the federal government in the Constitution belongs to the state, and we must very seriously protect that right.
Thank you. Mr. Ford?
What's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. And it's wrong to ask our National Guardsmen to take the vaccine to remain on active duty. We should not allow it, and we should challenge the federal government on this.
Thank you. Representative Warner?
Same here. I agree. We should not mandate this vaccine on our National Guardsmen, and it's time for us as states to stand up to the federal government. There's nothing wrong with bowing up on the federal government and telling them we're not going to fall for this mess. There's nothing wrong with that.
Thank you. Mr. Bolso?
Let me express my strong agreement with my good friend, Representative Warner. There's absolutely a legal means to do this, Derby. The Attorney General's office can use the 10th Amendment. That's the one that says any powers not delegated to the United States by this Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. And under the 10th Amendment, we have, once again, an example of federal overreach, the federal government trying to make a decision for the Tennessee Army National Guard, which it has no business making. We do need to continue to have the state of Tennessee and other states push back on federal overreach using the 10th Amendment.
Thank you. Mr. Rabner?
We've got some pretty good pit bulls up there in Washington, and Congressman Green and Senator Blackburn, and I really support the position they're taking. And Dr. Green is a physician. He's got a lot more capability and qualifications than any of us. I do agree it's a federal overreach. I think it ought to be a state decision. And I think we ought to be able to rely on these personal and religious exemptions that people are asking for and take them more seriously than they're currently being taken.
Thank you. Ms. Moore?
Could you repeat the question, please, Derby?
Do you believe the state has the legal standing to override federal law regarding service requirement for members of the military, such as the vaccine?
Absolutely. State sovereignty. And I'm grateful to have our Constitution Sheriff with us tonight as well, to make sure that our states are protected and our rights are protected as well. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to Mr. Lawrence for the next question.
I'm trying to figure out what wokeology is. I believe it was Mark Twain that once says it costs a lot of money to lose a political race. About half of you are going to find out. Where's your money coming from? How much of it do you have?
All right. It'll be 1-minute answers. And Mr. Fitterer, we are beginning with you, please.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. So about 95% of my donations have come from within the district. The exceptions to that are my mom and mother-in-law and family members who want me to be successful for some reason. So it's all been fully disclosed in my campaign finance reports. My treasurer's here tonight, and I'd invite anybody to visit that and look it up on the website.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ford?
Thank you, Tom. This is an important enough race that my campaign is largely self-funded. I've gotten donations from about 30 people, I believe, individuals who have chosen to come in. I've got no PAC money. I've got no money from special interests, and I've got no group that is giving me the preponderance of my dollars. I'm going to be responsible to the people of the 92nd District, and I'm not going to be responsible to any special interests.
Thank you. Representative Warner.
Thank you. My campaign mainly is self-funded. I have raised a little bit of money in the district, but mainly self-funded. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bolso.
Tom, you're right, it is very expensive. We've spent, probably somewhere in the range of $170,000 getting our message out across the district. Most of that has come from our personal resources. Kathy and I think enough of the importance of the issues that are presented to us today that we are putting our own resources on the line. And it's not just totally out of altruistic reasons. We've got children, we've got grandchildren that we want to leave a country and a community that is at least as good as the one that we found. And the rest of our donations come typically from some of my clients who are familiar with the type of work that we do and the advocacy that we can bring to causes that we support, and from voters across District 61. And the beauty of it, Tom, in terms of funding, is that if elected, I'm beholden to no one except the voters of our district. I have no PACs to report to. We have no special interest to report to. We have no elected officials to report to. We are going to be focused like a laser on what's in the best interest of each of our voters in District 61, and that is it.
Thank you. Mr. Rabner.
So in my case, it's both personal investment as well as donations from a large number of individuals. Less than 20% of my money raised is coming from outside the county versus, I think my opponent's almost half is coming from outside the county. So I understand that our focus is going to be on the district and not beholden to anyone. But at the same time, it has become expensive to do these. I've learned the good, the bad, and the ugly. But unlike what I've been accused of raising more than $500,000, of which most is special interest or lobby group, I've actually raised less special interest and lobby money than my opponent.
All right, thank you. Ms. Moore.
I have received donations from citizens, moms and dads. My husband and I have both self-funded also our campaign. And I am honored to announce that I recently received a contribution from Tennessee Firearms Association because of my stand on the Second Amendment.
Thank you. Mr. Sloan.
Well, while I'm walking out and trying to, get votes and inform people about my candidacy, I haven't asked a single person for a donation. I don't believe in a vote to be monetary. It's out there on my website. Whoever wants to donate to my candidacy, I would say my mom, my brother, a few friends, my dad, they've donated to to me running for state office, but mostly 97 to probably 99% of my own funds funding myself in this campaign.
All right, thank you. Mr. Lawrence, do you have a follow-up to that question? All right, then we will move back to you, Mr. Jones, for a question that will have a 1-minute answer, and Mr. Ford, you will kick us off.
The state of Tennessee has recently provided funding for a new Titan Stadium and construction of Ford's Blue Oval manufacturing plant in West Tennessee. If elected, will you support similar economic development projects in the future?
All right, thank you. Mr. Ford, 1 minute.
Thank you, Derby. Just like when I was on the county commission and they would bring projects to us, I look at each project standalone. And I look at each project through the lens of, will it deliver benefits to the county? Will it deliver benefits to the district? Will it deliver benefits to the state? Specifically on the Titan Stadium, when I looked at that, the benefits that derive from tearing down a stadium and rebuilding a stadium were minimal. The economic benefits for Nashville and for the state were minimal in that particular case. So I will look at each project individually. I will look at the economic as far as the social benefits of that particular project.
Thank you. Representative Warner.
Well, thank you, and it's a great question, and it's a question that I got to vote on. I supported the Ford factory in West Tennessee. It was going in an area that was in an economic distressed area. I thought it would be good for West Tennessee. I've seen what it's done for Middle Tennessee and how it's helped people in Middle Tennessee. Now, the Tennessee Titans, on the other hand, different story. I would not vote to give $500 million of your taxpayers to the kneeling Tennessee Titans. When we got men and women coming back from overseas that's been blown into, arms and legs missing, and you can't come out of that tunnel and stand for that flag. These guys on these fields are making millions. These owners are making billions of dollars, and we got service men and women coming back. And it's a sad, sad situation. I was one of 19 House members that voted against it.
Thank you, Representative Warner. Mr. Bulso.
Derby, I also would have voted against that Titans $500 million giveaway of public funds had I been in the General Assembly at the time. You know, we've got some very recent historical parallels. In Los Angeles, recently was constructed the SoFi Stadium, which cost $4.5 billion, all with private money. So I'm not someone who is convinced that we have to give wealthy owners of football franchises hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer funds in order to have football played here in Nashville, Tennessee, or in Middle Tennessee. Instead, that type of money, Derby, I think should be used to look at the community that we've got and to see how else it could be used. Here in Williamson County, we're about 250,000 in population. We're projected to be 500,000 just by 2040. That's going to require major outlay of funds for infrastructure, both above ground and underground, and we already have water and sewer systems that are being overrun by our development. So I am opposed to using $500 million of public funds to pay to owners of football stadiums.
Thank you. Mr. Ravener.
Well, I think this is where 35 years in business will be helpful at the state level. I think every decision has to rest on its own merits and what the economic impact is and the return on that investment. There are pro formas and projections that can be made. Williamson County has become an economic engine because of the private and public partnerships that we've made to bring good, strong businesses and jobs into Williamson County. And I think we're going to have to continue to look at those situations as one-on-one types of efforts in the future and determine if it's going to be economically viable for the state and the county to do that. But for us to say, I don't think it's an either or. We have to do all of the things that people are saying. We've got a surplus in the state. We're raising a lot of money, and a lot of that is being driven by the great businesses that are coming here. And so we have to look at that economic impact and be able to manage those funds accordingly.
Thank you. Ms. Moore.
I see both of these situations as private enterprises, and I would have voted against both of them.
Thank you. Mr. Sloan.
Could you repeat the question one more time?
The state has recently provided funding for a new Titan Stadium and construction of Ford's Blue Oval manufacturing plant in West Tennessee. If elected, will you support similar economic development projects in the future?
When it comes to the Ford plant, that seems to be good jobs for people in that area. So I wouldn't have anything against that from what I've heard and read. Now, when it comes to Titan Stadium, each player that did not kneel is a Titan in my book. They stood up for what they believe and had pride in this country. For giving $500 million to someone that would be the taxpayers' money, getting it from the taxpayers, it's almost like double dipping. You take the taxpayers' money to fund it, and then they show up for a game to pay and watch. So I wouldn't support that if I was on, or any kind of state representative in that matter.
Thank you. Mr. Fitterer.
Thank you, Derby. I think we often hear politicians or people running for office talking about the need to run government like a business. In my day job, in my business, I work largely in merger and acquisitions of healthcare practices. And every deal is simple. You remove your emotions, you look at the economics of the deal, and if it's a win-win deal with a good return on your investment, you do the deal. And that's how I'd approach any kind of similar project in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, do you have a follow-up to that question?
No, I think they answered it.
Okay, thank you so much. Then we're going to move on to our last full question, and that'll be Mr. Lawrence, and these will be 1-minute answers.
What is the criteria you use to either support or oppose a tax increase?
All right, Representative Warner, you're going to kick us off. 1-minute answer, please.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I don't support any tax increases. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Bolso.
Tom, I think Americans are overtaxed. I think those of us here in Williamson County are overtaxed. I think our focus needs to be on reducing the tax burden. Our property taxes have increased as property assessments have gone up over the last 10 years. Our income taxes have gone up under the current administration. Sales tax, of course, is still at an all-time high. So I don't really think that the question of what's the criteria to be used to approve or oppose a tax increase is really the question to be asked. The question to be asked is how can we get the federal government to stop wasting taxpayer money so that our local and state governments have the resources that they need in order to take care of the development, the infrastructure, and the other local needs that we have for funds. We don't have a taxing problem in this country except that the taxes are too high. What we have is an outrageous spending problem where we send billions of dollars to the federal government that get wasted in a complex bureaucracy and then come back with strings attached. I'm opposed to that.
Thank you. Mr. Ravener.
I also think as Americans, we're overtaxed, and while tax rates may not be going up here in Williamson County or the state because of assessments and values, overall taxes are going up. And so we're raising a lot of capital for the state and the county to use. So I do not support increasing any taxes at this point. I think we need to find a way to be fiscally conservative, and if we need money to go from one pocket to another, we need to find it within the programs and the resources that we're currently using, and not keep adding to that because, to what others have said, if people knew where their taxes were actually going and where that money was going to be spent, they may not have as big a problem with it as we all do. And until we can figure that out, we've got to figure out how to be more fiscally disciplined.
Thank you. Ms. Moore.
I do not support increasing taxes. I agree that we should look at the taxes or what we're spending. If we are short, then we need to look at the internal budget and we need to decide what can be cut. But to constantly go back to the people and increase their taxes is unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sloan.
I don't believe in any increase in taxes. There's a lot of businessmen in my family line, and they always, every year, would look at where's the money going. And if they could take away something to make budget neutral, and they would try to meet budget neutral all the time. But they always want to take care of the employees. So for my stance on taxes, I would say no new taxes and no raise in taxes either.
All right, thank you. Mr. Fitterer.
Thank you, Tom. For the past several years, I've been the chairman of the Spring Hill Budget and Finance Committee. In each of the past 2 years, we've reduced our property tax rate. Combined in those past 2 years, we've decreased it by about 24.9%. Took advantage of rock bottom interest rates during COVID to refinance the municipal debt, saving the taxpayers millions of dollars. We now have a AA+ bond rating, and also during that time we increased our traffic impact fees on new development by around 600%.
Thank you. Mr. Ford.
I think, Derby, in this Republican debate, you're not going to find anybody who's going to say they're going to raise taxes. So I fall in line with that. At the same time, we've got a $2 billion rainy day fund, and we all have to look at what is the appropriate thing to do with that. In Belfast this weekend, I was talking with a first responder, and he said, what can the state do to support PTSD among our first responders, among our fire, among our policemen, among our EMTs? I've done research, and South Carolina has a PTSD-specific program that supports our first responders. So I would not support raising taxes, but I do support spending on our first responders to help them with their mental health issues. It's a huge issue in this state and in this district. Our mental health needs for our first responders, they are committing suicide at a rate much greater than anyone else in our community. For the last 2 years, they have faced things you and I cannot imagine. And that would be the first bill that I would drop up there, is the Tennessee Mental Health First Responder Act.
Right, thank you. Mr. Lawrence, do you have a follow-up question?
I do, but it's been very well documented where we are. And there's no way in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, none of them are going to answer that question, which I actively and willingly participated in. I'm not sure I got an answer to my question is, what would it take? I think the shortest answer was the state representative from Marshall County, and he just told me, I ain't voting for it. And I figured out at the end of that, of his 3-word response, so I apologize for the naive question. I will take advantage of the opportunity, though, to ask this question that needs to be asked and to be consistent. Say the Speaker of the House or the Governor of Tennessee gives you a call. Say you get elected. And Bill Lee or Speaker Sexton calls you, needs your help. And then the phone calls start coming from around the corner. Which of those phone calls are you going to pay attention to?
All right, we will treat that as our follow-up answer. And Representative Warner, we're going to start with you, please. This will be a 30-second answer.
I'm going to pay attention to the calls that come from the 92nd District. The Speaker and the Governor don't elect me, and I don't work for them.
Thank you. Mr. Bosa?
I have the utmost respect for Governor Lee and for Speaker Sexton, but I am only going to be thinking about the voters of District 61 in Williamson County when I cast a vote. I'm not going up there, Tom, just to have my arm twisted by someone in order to do something that is not in the best interest of our voters. My criteria for voting on a bill, on any bill, is going to be, is this bill in the best interests of the voters of District 61 in Williamson County? If the answer to that question is yes, I will vote for it. If the answer is no, I will not, regardless of the position that the person twisting my arm holds.
Thank you. Mr. Abner?
Yeah, this role works for the people, in my mind, not the other way around. And while we may want to get input from experts if it's a complicated issue and listen to the people around us, ultimately it's going to be the people's call, and our opinions are going to matter in the conversation, but we work for the people.
Thank you. Ms. Moore?
If I am elected by the 63rd District, I am going to the State House to represent them and their concerns and whatever their positions are. I am not beholden to the leadership. I appreciate the leadership and the job that they have to do, but I'm being elected by we the people.
Thank you. Mr. Sloan?
Last time I tried to call my representative that was in office, this office that I'm running for, I never got a response back or any sort of way. But when it comes to the question, of course, by the people, for the people is why I'm elected, if I'm elected, sorry. And that's who I'm going to listen to. So if they call me, email me. I'm also looking into a way, if elected, to try to interactively have them give a vote securely to make sure they are residents of my district, so I can see that on a website somewhere to say, hey, this is what my people are thinking, a faster response.
Thank you. Mr. Fitterer?
Thank you, Tom. As I said in my opening statement, I believe I'm very well known in my current position for my communication and open engagement with voters, and I'll certainly always do what's right for the district. Certainly believe that the leadership and myself are capable of being professional and capable of disagreeing without being disagreeable.
Thank you. Mr. Ford?
Yes, and while I agree the interest of the district comes first, the one thing you can expect from me is if I disagree with you, I'll tell you. I'm not going to tell the voters of the district that I will do one thing for them and turn around and do something else. You can trust me on that piece. The other game that they play is exclusion of particular counties. It's good for you, but it's not good for my district. And so they will exclude their districts, and I will not play that game either.
All right, thank you. Okay, that concludes our main body of questions, and now we're going to go to what we're calling the lightning round. These are going to be 6 additional questions. Again, we're going to take turns, up to 30 seconds only for an answer. So they're meant to be a little bit of a quicker response, a little bit of a quicker answer. And Derby Jones, we'll start with you for lightning question number 1. And we will start off with Ms. Moore. We're going to have you start this off.
Thank you.
All right, I'll try to read faster. Do you support the lawsuit recently filed against the Williamson County school system and its leaders over alleged CRT being taught in the classroom?
Absolutely, yes, I do. I've been working with Representative Terry Lynn in the state legislature because wit and wisdom is being taught that is in violation. It is critical race theory based. It is in violation of state statute. And they absolutely, I am so proud that the parents are rising up to take back local control of their children's education. Thank you, Derby.
Thank you. Mr. Sloan?
Yes, I supported the lawsuit against Williamson County to get that out of here. That evil has no place in Williamson County, our school system. And the parents are doing a great thing, pushing back.
Thank you. Mr. Fitterer?
Thank you, Derby. Like everybody else up here, my time has been consumed with campaigning over the past several weeks. So other than reading a headline, I know very little about the lawsuit or the merits of it. I will say that I certainly believe parents should be involved in every aspect of their child's life, especially their education.
Thank you. Mr. Ford?
Thank you for the question, Derby. It is critical that the parents take responsibility for their child's education. I think we've seen that over COVID. We have seen the parents have become more involved. They've understood those issues and things that are being taught in the schools. Where we find the critical race theories, where we find the anti-American in our school system, we must get it out of the school system.
Thank you. Representative Warner?
Yes, I support the lawsuit. As far as Terry Land Weaver, what's sad in this state is Terry Land Weaver carried a parent's Bill of Rights, a bill that was passed and signed into law in Florida. We have a supermajority in this state, and we couldn't get it out of committee with a second. Sad situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bolso?
I'm obviously opposed to teaching of CRT in our schools here in Williamson County, Derby, because not only is it wrong, but it violates a state statute. We have a rich and wonderful history in this country that really expresses the freedom and liberty that yearns in man's soul, and the idea that for some reason we're going to set aside all the principles and ideals that have made this country great and teach some type of a CRT that is instead of supporting American idealism is opposed to it is something that I'm inalterably opposed to.
Thank you. Mr. Ravener?
So anyone has the right to file a lawsuit. You wonder if it becomes a big distraction when the focus needs to be on the kids. Certainly opposed to CRT. Really want to ensure that our parents are involved and parents working together with the school. We've had so much uncivil discourse throughout the last few years. I want to see us work better together. When we have to resort to the legal system and lawsuits, then the system is breaking down, and we've got to find ways for the parents and the school systems to work better together.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Lawrence, we're on lightning round question number 2.
Critical race theory is against Williamson County School Board policy. Asked the director of schools just a few days ago, is critical race theory taught in Williamson County School? The answer was no, by policy. But each one of y'all have spent some considerable time talking about critical race theory. Why?
All right, thank you. Mr. Sloan, we're going to begin with you, please. 30-second answer.
I mean, when it comes to critical race theory, I mean, that's a name that they've put on it. I think anything that meets that merit of critical race theory, regardless of what name you put on it, should be outlawed. I mean, there's nothing like that should be implemented in Williamson County. So no matter what name they put on it, they could say it's not being taught in Williamson County, but what I've heard, what people show me, it is. So I don't think anything that meets that merit should be taught here in Williamson County or the state or across this nation.
All right, thank you. Mr. Fitterer.
Thank you, Tom. I think perhaps I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage because I don't believe I've mentioned critical race theory at all. I have mentioned, certainly my belief in parents being involved in their children's education and the need to support public schools and public school teachers. If I'm not mistaken, the Tennessee General Assembly has also banned the use of CRT, so I don't know how to further answer your question based off what I've provided.
Thank you. Mr. Ford.
Yeah, rather than talk about what I'm against, I'd rather talk about what I'm for. I'm for every child having the opportunity to pursue their educational goals, to pursue their goals that they have in life. And I'm for the school system supporting those goals, regardless of race, creed, or color. I'm for the school system being able to be that conduit that allows that child to become all of they can be and pursue their goals, dreams, and desires in this world.
Thank you. Representative Warner.
Yes, I co-sponsored that bill, and I voted against it. I'm against critical race theory. It teaches hate, it teaches division, and it has no place in our public schools.
Thank you. Mr. Bosa.
Tom, your question calls to mind something I think that Abraham Lincoln said in one of his debates with Stephen Douglas. He said once, "We all declare for liberty, but although we all use the same words, we do not mean the same thing." So it could be that what's going on here is that you have one definition of critical race theory that's embedded in the statute that Representative Warner is talking about, and yet the Williamson County Administrator is referring to something different. I think at bottom what's important is that our schools teach children about the wonderful nature of our American history and not denigrate it.
Thank you. Mr. Ravener.
There are 14 points in the state law that I support, and anything that's bounced up against that, then we should eliminate from the schools. But the bigger issue for me is I've always tried to be a role model for my kids, and as parents, we all try to be role models for our kids, and we're really taking our eye off the kids when we start to get into a lot of these discussions and uncivil types of arguments along the way. And so I would really love us to see us put our focus back on the kids and make sure that they're getting the best education possible.
Thank you. Ms. Moore.
With all due respect, Tom, I don't know what administrator you spoke to, but I serve on the Tennessee Textbook and Quality Instructional Materials Quality Commission, and we have, and I've been reviewing the textbooks in Tennessee for a decade. And we absolutely do have critical race theory being taught in the schools in Williamson County and across this state. And it is an outrage that this is going on because we are indoctrinating our children with racist, anti-Semitic content. That's CRT.
Thank you.
May I follow up?
Yes.
Wit and wisdom.
Yes, sir.
Wit and wisdom has been adopted by Williamson County Schools from a menu offered by the Tennessee Department of Education.
Actually, Wit and Wisdom was approved for Williamson County to use in K through 3, but it was not adopted by the Department of Education or the Textbook Commission.
All right, I'm going to let everyone have an answer to that as well. Mr. Sloan, would you like to reply?
I'm going to repeat the question again.
Wit and wisdom is on a menu. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not here to defend wit and wisdom, but I do know, and the gentleman that answered my question was the superintendent of schools, Jason Golden. Wit and Wisdom is apparently approved by the State of Tennessee Department of Education. And Williamson County was able to choose from that menu, if I understand it correctly. Is that something you're willing to deal with?
I don't think the moms and dads chose it. If they, I've never heard of a mom and dad saying, I wanted wit and wisdom. You know, so whoever voted on that to make that something to be taught here in Williamson County, I don't think the moms and dads had a say on that.
All right,
That's my answer.
thank you. All right, Mr. Fitterer, would you like to?
Is the question, is it appropriate to choose off the menu, or is the menu
I don't think
creation
you can choose
wrong?
off the menu. I don't know, but I
I'm
don't
just-
think
I'm
you
trying to
can choose.
understand the
Ms.
question.
Cardozo-Moore probably can answer that.
Would you like to just clarify? We're just trying to get through this little follow-up. Tom, what would you say your follow-up question is for them to answer concerning wit and wisdom?
If wit and wisdom is wrong, why is it on the state menu?
I can't answer intelligently about the selection process for the state menu. If there is a inefficient or process producing bad results, certainly that should be reviewed, be it by the Department of Education or the General Assembly, but I don't have enough expertise to know about the current process to answer that.
All right, Mr. Ford?
Thank you, Tom. Wit and Wisdom is a reading program. It's intended to teach our children to read. Only 35% of the students across the state are reading at state level. Something has to change to ensure that our children are getting a great education that they deserve.
Thank you. Representative Warner?
Well, I don't think my partner here quite answered your question. If Wit and Wisdom, if it's a book that's been approved by the state and it has CRT in it and it's being taught in our schools and they picked it off a list that got approved by our state education committee or our commissioner, then somebody at the state needs to be held accountable.
Thank you. Mr. Boso, excuse me.
Tom, I can't address whether wit and wisdom is on a menu that is exclusive or not. What I can tell you is that our country was the first one in the history of mankind that was founded on the principle that all of us are endowed with certain inalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we're the first country ever to recognize that our rights come from God and up from the people to the government, not the other way around. That's what we need to teach in school.
Thank you. Mr. Abner?
You know, I think government in this case can learn a lot from the business community. If businesses were at odds like this over this kind of a topic, they'd be failing. And when, in my experience, when you see circumstances like this, we've got to get people together and figure out a better solution than where we are today, because all it's doing is denigrating and degrading our educational system when parents and teachers and administrators are at odds with each other, and we've got to find a way to make that match up better.
Thank you. All right, let's move on. Mr. Jones, let's go on to lightning round question number 3, please.
Yeah, I feel like a school board meeting may break out here if we're not careful. All right, let's mix it up a little bit here. Okay. What 3 civic organizations in Williamson County have you been a member of over the past 3 years? And for those in District 92, they can include Marshall County.
All right, thank you. Mr. Fitterer, we're going to begin with you.
Sure. Obviously, my elected position with the City of Spring Hill, we're members of the Bridge Church, the Williamson County Republican Party, the Tennessee Republican Party, National Rifle Association, Tennessee Right to Life, graduate of the Spring Hill Citizens Police Academy as well.
Thank you. Mr. Ford?
Yes, my 3, a proud member of the Rotary Club, member of Cross Point Church, and also am a proud graduate of Leadership Brentwood, sponsored by our Chambers of Commerce.
Thank you. Representative Warner?
Yes, I'm a member of Riggs Crossroads Church of Christ, member of the Marshall County Republican Party, and the Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you. Mr. Bolso?
Derby, I spend a lot of time in my role as chairman of the Supreme Court of Tennessee's Advisory Commission on the Rules of Practice and Procedure, a role that the Supreme Court recently reappointed me to. My family and I are members of St. Edward Church on Thompson Lane, where our oldest son, Andrew, is pastor. And also, I'm the founder of Tennessee Attorneys for Life, which is an organization that exists in order to provide pro bono services to the pro-life community.
Thank you, Mr. Abner.
On the civic side, the newly inducted president of the Downtown Neighborhood Association. I'm a Rotarian on the Civil War Historical Commission, vice president of the Friends of Franklin Parks Board.
Thank you. Ms. Moore.
Well, I'm a member of the Williamson County Republican Party, and I'm also a member of the Restoration of Israel Fellowship. And of course, I'm the president and founder of Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, a nonprofit international organization that fights racism and anti-Semitism across the globe.
Thank you. And Mr. Sloan.
I've always voted Republican, but it was only about maybe a little over a year ago that I joined the GOP of Williamson County. And I had to be a candidate, had to join the Tennessee GOP to run for my campaign this year that was put in place by the state. So those are really the two civic organizations that I'm a part of.
All right, thank you. All right, lightning round number 4. Back to you, Mr. Lawrence.
3 weeks ago, the Fed raised the interest rates 0.75%. They're going to do it again next week. Is the only way to bring interest rates down stop borrowing money? Yes or no?
All right. Mr. Ford, we're going to begin with you, please.
Thank you. That is certainly the best way to bring interest rates down. The economy across this state and across this district is hurting the people of this district. That is a huge concern, and we've got to do everything we can to make sure that the people have confidence in their job, in their government, and in the economy.
Thank you. Representative Warner.
Yes, I agree that, maybe we need to stop the borrowing. But the Biden administration, they are gutting the American family. And we must take every means at the state level to make sure that we do not make it harder for Tennesseans to make a living.
Thank you. Mr. Bolso.
Tom, great question, great topic. Yes, we're borrowing too much money. We have a national debt now. It's over $30 trillion. It's costing us $900 million a day just in interest. It is crippling families. It's crippling the economic future of our children and our grandchildren. It has to be stopped.
Thank you. Mr. Abner.
Yeah, we put way too much money into the system, which flooded the market. We've got to stop spending the money to begin with and let the free market work for itself. If businesses can do what they're equipped to do, we're going to be able to get through these kinds of challenges. It's the government overreach, once again, that has stopped the ability of free markets to be able to complete their mission.
Thank you. Ms. Moore.
Cut the taxes so that people have more money to spend on their own. That's what needs to take place to reduce the amount of money that we've given away in the last couple of years is out of control.
Thank you. Mr. Sloan.
Definitely stop the borrowing. I was looking at the fiscal year report of how much our state borrows from the federal government. Besides that, he mentioned about $30 trillion that we're in debt. Actually, if you account for all liabilities of the United States, it's actually over $100 trillion. But so when it comes to your question, I would say no, we need to cut taxes, stop the borrowing, and look into ways into cutting the fat.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Fitterer.
Thank you. Certainly inflation needs to come down before we see interest rates come back down as well. Certainly the supply chain issues cause a lot of pricing pressures in the market today. The General Assembly can certainly address ways to support truckers, rails, ports, to move cargo and freight efficiently and help diversify the supply chain base as well. The other thing that I think will help bring inflation down is just restoring consumer confidence, and the greatest and easiest way for us to do that is elect good, principled, conservative leaders to put good, principled, conservative economic policy in place.
All right, thank you. All right, we have two more, one from each of our press. Mr. Jones, we'll start with you. Lightning round question number 5.
If elected or re-elected, what will be your first legislative action?
And we will start with Representative Warner.
School safety. Work to make sure our schools are secure. I didn't realize this till a couple of weeks ago in Marshall County. We have 4 elementary schools that do not have an SRO officer. I went to our county mayor, and he said it had never been put in the budget. Well, that's not an excuse anymore. We've got to make sure our schools are secure, and I support putting retired police officers, military personnel, whatever it takes to make sure our schools are secure.
Thank you. Mr. Bosa.
Derby, the biggest economic threat that our families face today is this out-of-control spending by the federal government that we've talked about a bit tonight. That needs to be brought under control. My first bill would be to introduce legislation authorizing the state of Tennessee under the 10th Amendment to bring an action under the original jurisdiction of the U.S. Supreme Court to have it rein in the out-of-control spending in Washington, which it has the jurisdiction to do. And as we saw 2 weeks ago, particularly on June 24 of 2022, we've got those 5 rock-solid constitutional conservatives that are prepared to do it.
Thank you. Mr. Rabner.
So if you heard me say anything tonight, my focus is on Williamson County. With doubling the population in the next 20 years, infrastructure is going to be enormous. And we've got to have a bill in place that is going to ensure that Williamson County is not penalized for its success. We are the economic engine of this state. Some people think the roads in Williamson County are heated. The county is doing extremely well. We need to have the infrastructure in place from the state to make sure we're getting our fair share.
Thank you. Ms. Moore.
Mine would be that we sever the ties of education dollars from the federal government. We are being beholden to the federal government. This critical race theory garbage that comes into our schools is because of these government programs. And it's time for Tennesseans to pay for our children's education. We need to stop taking the money from the federal government. And I would also include in that we need to get rid of Bill Gates. Why is Bill Gates funding our education here in Tennessee? We shouldn't be beholden to these people because this is where all of the garbage comes in. This is why we aren't teaching our kids phonics and why we're using programs like critical rate or the wit and wisdom to educate our children.
Thank you.
We got to sever the ties.
Thank you. Mr. Sloan.
Could you repeat the question one more time?
If elected, what will be your first legislative action?
I'm big on protecting our future generations, so it would take I'd probably get a group of people and try to make a needs analysis of our school systems, primarily infrastructure. Since the recent Uvalde shooting, what we could do to better protect our kids. Now, I went to Page High School and a product of Williamson County Schools, so we had a process in place. You checked in at the front office, and you didn't get past that. Every student was supposed to keep the doors locked, not go outside. Only teachers had that permission to do so. So we were kind of fortified in that aspect, but that's what I would look out for our future generation kids, either educational and infrastructure-wise.
Thank you. Mr. Fitterer.
Thank you, Derby. My first action would be to support counties and cities that are facing growth pressures, investing back into infrastructure, revisiting and modifying regulations that negatively impact utility costs, ensuring the growth and new development contributes back to community needs. Last year there was a bill, House Bill 2012, that would have reverted back to a pre-2004 sales tax distribution model. Got placed behind the budget but ultimately wasn't passed. That's a bill that injected $1 million+ immediately back into District 92.
Thank you. And Mr. Ford.
Thank you for the question. The First Responders Mental Health Initiative. Sheriff Rhodes tells me that it's very difficult to find police officers. They are placed under enormous pressure from society and from the requirements that are placed on them. They have suffered under the defund the police movement, and they are suffering from PTSD. The suicide rates for those first responders, police officers, firemen, and EMS is higher than the general population, and I will help and support them in getting the help that they need and deserve.
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Lawrence, finish us out here tonight, sir. This will be lightning round question number 6.
Would you be willing to, say, day after the election, would you be willing to send your donors a refund of any money you got left over?
All right, Mr. Bosa, we're going to start with that off with you, and it's a 30-second answer.
No, Tom, I wouldn't, because those donors would want me to keep the money for the general election.
All right, Mr. Rabner.
I'll be spending all the money I can raise, most of it probably out of my own pocket. So if I give it any of it back, it's going to be to me.
Ms. Moore.
If I give any of it back, it's going to go to the volunteers who have volunteered to help me get elected.
Mr. Sloan.
I'm running a pretty lean campaign, so I don't think there's going to be anything left over. Plus, like I said, if someone wants to donate, they can, but it's mostly been from friends and family.
Mr. Fitterer.
Tom, likewise, I expect to need whatever remaining funds available for the general election as well.
Mr. Ford.
My donors have given me the money with absolutely no strings attached. No expectation of a refund and no expectation of any action on my part at the General Assembly.
Representative Warner.
No, I would not. I have a Democrat opponent in the general, and we absolutely need no more Democrats in Nashville.
All right, thank you. That now finishes our rounds of questions. Thank you, Derby Jones. Thank you, Tom Lawrence. And now, candidates, we're going to let you finish out the evening with a closing statement. We'll go back to our 1-minute mark. So if you are ready, then Mr. Fitterer, we're going to begin with you.
Thank you, Sherry, and thank you, everybody, for coming out this evening. I mentioned in my opening statement I wasn't originally from Middle Tennessee. I was actually raised in a very, very rural part of northern Arizona. On an end of a dirt road, the road stopped, and that was our house. And I've spent the past 8 years now serving a very rapidly growing city. So nobody knows the dynamic nature of our district, both a very rural area and a rapidly growing area, better than myself. I'm very uniquely situated to best serve the district. I'll vote to restore this district's trust in their representation and vow again to how we serve with integrity, honesty, and follow the rule of law. Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you. Mr. Ford.
Thank you to the panel, thank you to the Williamson County Republican Party, and thank you to my fellow candidates who've stepped up and put themselves on the line to run for this very important office. I appreciate them stepping out there. This election is really about trust. At the end of the day, who do you trust to represent you with integrity, to represent you well, to be effective, get things done in our district? And secondly, who trusts you? Who trusts you to run your life? Who trusts you to make decisions for your health? Who trusts you to make decisions for your children? So it's about trust at the end of the day. I'm Jeff Ford. I would be honored to have your vote for State Representative District 92.
Thank you. Representative Warner.
Well, thank you. Let me start by saying I've been ranked twice by 2 different conservative groups as one of the top 5 most conservatives in our state. I will look after your tax dollars. I've got a record that proves I will do it. I will fight for your freedoms. I've got a record that proves I'll do that. In closing, our district deserves a fighter, someone who is willing to stand up to the career politicians and the lobbyists running our state. Tennessee has the ability to serve as a national model for its kind of success that true conservative policymaking can accomplish. One promise I can make to you is I will fight to keep government off your back and out of your pocket. I look forward to serving again as your 92nd state representative. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bosso.
Thank you, Sherry. When she was asked whether she refused to give up her seat on that bus in Montgomery, Alabama in 1955, Rosa Parks said something amazing. She said, "The only tired I was I was tired of giving in." Let me ask you this. Are you tired of state legislatures across this country giving in to federal overreach? Are you tired of out-of-control federal spending that starves our local government of the resources it needs to provide for the development that we're going to be experiencing over the next 20 years in Williamson County? Are you tired of giving in to this cancel culture that has so permeated our culture across the entire country? If you are, ladies and gentlemen, join with us. If you want someone who can fight and who's never going to give up for our Tennessee values, for our families, or for the government that our founders intended, vote Gino on August 4.
Thank you. Mr. Rabner.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've been fighting my whole life. I've lived the American dream. I started with nothing, was the first in my family to graduate from college with lots of help from great teachers and coaches. I've been serving my family, my community, and my country since I can remember. From the Naval Academy to the submarine force to big business and then small business, I've served others with no greater satisfaction than helping people achieve their own goals and aspirations in life. I've been plugged into this community, and with 3 generations living here in Williamson County, I care deeply about our future, and I will fight to continue its success. There is a real choice in this election, and people should be informed about each candidate. Look them up. Read about them. Actions speak louder than words. People can say anything, but the best indicator of what someone will do in the future is what they have done in the past. And my past is filled with service, success, and problem solving for the greater good. Your vote matters, and I'm asking for your support and your vote on August 4th. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Moore.
I had a mother come to me not long ago, and she came up to me and she said, "I'm supporting you in this upcoming race because after what my children had to go through for the last couple of years with the forced mask mandates, the schools being closed," she said, "I believe you will go and you will represent me and my children, that you will care as much for my children as you do for your own." There are 4 qualifications biblically for the people that we appoint over us, and you can find these in Exodus chapter 18. When we appoint people or we vote for people to represent us, we have to vote for people that are accomplished, people that fear God, people who love truth, and people who hate money. I am here to represent we the people. We have to take back control of our government, of our state and local government specifically. We don't know what the next crisis is going to befall us and what this federal government is going to do to us. But we need to stand up as people, citizens of this county, and tell the federal government no. Ladies and gentlemen, I would be honored to have your vote for the 63rd seat.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Mr. Sloan.
I have nothing in my history that really puts me in the limelight of like he's done great things. I was just a guy that was working in healthcare that happened to, experience the whole mandates, and along with other nurses next to me crying and wishing that that had never happened to them. And a lot of people got purged out of the healthcare system. So I'll be a big fighter in that respect of no more mandates in the future, if I can help it, if elected. As well as I have a family of businessmen, farmers. My brother's board certified psych nurse. So I'm a mixed bunch of like professionals that I can get expert advice on. So if elected, I hope to bring some of that advice to the state level. And I have never heard of a Sloan that didn't do something with integrity and put his name behind it and give it 100%. So vote for me coming this election primary for District 63.
Thank you. All right. On behalf of the Williamson County Republican Party, we thank you again very much for being here with us. We thank our media, we thank our candidates, and let's together thank everyone. All right, and we're finished for the evening. Thank you so much.